so much. Though you missed the first half of the show, the second half is time for our conversation. The agenda is starting right now. I did say at the beginning of the program that my guest today is the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adamu. Welcome, Honorable Minister. Good to have you on the program. First time on the show.
Yeah.
One would begin to ask, what's Nancy doing with Water Resources Minister? You know that, of course, she's spoken with a lot of ministers, finance, trade and investment, CBN governor and all of that. What's the Honorable Minister of Water Resources doing? But I do know that water is very essential. Just earlier on, I did say it was Felani Kulakbokuti that sang, water, you don't get any me, isn't it?
That's right.
So water is very essential in every facet of life. Before we came in here, we took our bath, water. There's water in our cups right now. Water in our system, you know, makes up a high percentage of our body system. Let me ask you the first question, which is water a right or a commodity to be paid for?
Thank you very much, and good day, Nancy. Yes, it's both. There's an international consensus that every human being has a right to access to water, clean, hygienic water. It's been taken as a fundamental human right of every citizen to have it, and that's why it's been incorporated into the Sustainable Development Goals as Goal 6, 6.1 for water supply, 6.2 for sanitation. That is one. But also there is a consensus now all over the world that water is an economic commodity, and that has also been enshrined in our water policy here in Nigeria. Why? Because it's not simply rainwater that you get. The water is harvested, it is processed, and a lot of resources go into it, human and financial resources, to dam the water, to harvest it, to treat it, to transmit it, and to distribute. There's a lot of energy cost involved. There's cost of chemicals. There's cost of the labor that is involved. People operate shifts, and a typical municipal water supply works ideally 22 hours a day, and therefore you need like 2 or 3 shifts for people to be there to operate it. So where is all that money going to come from? So it's the consumers that need to pay for it. It's much the same way as you pay for electricity and you pay for mobile phones and so on and so forth. So that's the situation. So
in the Nigerian context now, how do you think that the citizens have taken the issue of water? Is it that of a right or that of a commodity? You know, because abroad, for example, you pay for water, you pay for gas, you pay for electricity. If your bills, if you don't have money, it's been cut off. So how do you think that as Nigerians we've taken it? More of a right or of a commodity?
Well, I think a lot some people, the informed, those that are well informed, understand their rights and duties as citizens to pay for these services. On the other hand, majority of people don't think so. And that's why you find that there's hardly any water agency that generates the actual revenue that it is supposed to, compared to the amount of water that it delivers to the people. But there is also the issue of apathy. Sometimes you can't blame the consumer because the service is erratic. When people don't get don't get good service, there is no incentive for them to pay for it. But if they know that 24/7 they can open their taps and get water from the taps, is always available, I think a lot of people will pay, much the same as they pay for other utility services.
Talk to me about what's been happening with your ministry, at least since almost 3 years now. Talk to me about some of the things that have been going on, because I know you also inherited a lot of projects. What's been going on?
Well, you know, first of all, early in December, like 3 weeks after we were appointed, we did a retreat. We organized a retreat for the ministry, and we came up with a number of issues that we said these are the issues that we want to resolve. We call it the roadmap. First of all, we said we needed to do some reforms in the ministry. 2, we need to revitalize our river basins. 3, we need to improve on our water supply situation. 4, we said we'll prioritize all the projects that we inherited and try to complete them in order of priority. We also were going to look at alternative areas for funding our projects.
Okay.
I think there are about 7 items. I can't remember all of them, but I would like to say that we started with the river basins. 2 months after the retreat in February, I set up a committee to advise on how we're going to revitalize the river basins. We did that. The report is being implemented in total. We have a new structure of the river basin. We put new management in January last year. We strengthen they are really working very hard now, much better than the way they were before, being more aggressive towards providing services related to agriculture than other things. We have round pegs and round holes. The executives are not people that failed in elections and were given job as patronage. No, the executives are professionals in their right. We introduced agri-extension services. So that's so much for that. Then we did an audit of all the ongoing projects and abandoned projects that we inherited. There were 116 of them in total. And we prioritized them. We took first priority, second priority, third priority. And we even decided to knock off some projects because we felt that there was no economic value in continuing with them. So those priority projects are now the focus, what we have in our budget, and we're working towards completing them. Hopefully this year we'll begin to to commission some of them. I believe that in the next few months, as far as water supply is concerned, I think we have Northern Asian and a number of other projects that we'll commission, and some dam projects are coming as well as some irrigation schemes. We had a new irrigation scheme, a program that will take Nigeria to 1.5 million hectares of irrigation by the year 2030. Okay. We also put a new program on water and sanitation, because I asked the question, why did we fail to meet the the Millennium Development Goals? Because we fared fairly well in the water supply aspect, but not the sanitation in particular. So we now came up with a new program called Partners for Expanded Water Supply and Sanitation, to be sure that we get to SDG targets by 2030. What we found out is that the MDGs was relying solely on budgetary allocations, and that will not work. We need to mobilize the entire country, including...
Is that the P-WASH program?
Yeah, the P-WASH program is addressing those problems that we realized that did not enable us to meet the Millennium Development Goals. So P-WASH is aimed to address those shortcomings so that we attain the SDGs.
And the P-WASH is your brainchild, as it were?
Oh, certainly.
I can see the smile on your face. As I said P-WASH, you smile.
Well, it's one of our flagship projects now that we want to start very soon. We have been doing a lot of groundwork. We're going to start with Kano and Ogun states because they were the first 2 states that indicated interest. Okay. And the idea is that federal government will no longer just be doing interventions and not seeing the value or kind of supplanting what the state should be doing, but it should be a collaboration, and that's what we are doing. Then, of course, one of the key things we wanted to do related to policy, we wanted to, the country has never had a water law, a comprehensive water law. Yeah, and that came also as part of the roadmap. We realized that we needed to do it, and there was a draft that has been gathering dust for a long time. So we dusted it up, finalized it, and now the House of Representatives has passed their own version, and they are now harmonizing with the Senate. So hopefully this year we'll have a comprehensive water law for the first time in the country.
I know that in 2016, the Federal Executive Council, which you're also part of, approved a draft of the National Water Resources Bill. and 2 other policies, which is the National Water Policy and the National Irrigation
Absolutely.
Policy.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about how far we've gone since then.
Well, like I said, the Water Resources Bill is likely to be passed very soon.
How soon? Because I heard the honorable in charge